And then also understanding that we have a much greater potential to heal than we've all been taught. Our bodies know how to be well. We just have to, nurture them and put them in the right condition, in the right environment, and take care of ourselves.
Hey there, and welcome to the Evolving Ageless podcast. This is the enlightened woman's answer to aging. So I'm your host, Michelle Dreilich, and as always, I am on a mission to change the way women age. And so each week, I'm joined by experts in their field that have discovered different ways for us to make small changes that have a huge impact on exactly that, the way we age, the way we retain our health. And so today we're going to talk about autoimmune disease. So have you ever known anyone, and I know, based on, degrees of separation, we all know someone, if it's not ourselves, it's someone we love or care about that suffers from an autoimmune condition. And by that, I mean, it's a kind of a big bucket of things like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, Sjogren's disease, psoriasis is autoimmune, Crohn's disease is autoimmune. And Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So there's a whole list of them. Anyone that suffers from those conditions, right? They're kind of lumped into a big category called autoimmune disease. And maybe they've just kind of escaped answers. They've tried so much, they're struggling with it. So here's the deal, right? We talk about this all the time. Our immune system, right, is here to protect us. And when it revs up for a fight, it's usually because something is invading its territory. It's protecting us. So in the case of a cold or the flu or any kind of illness like that, our immune system revs up, takes action, and then cleans up the mess afterward. But for some people, the immune system revs up and they're lumped in this bucket of your immune system is just haywire, right? It's attacking itself and we don't know why. But that answer for my next guest was not good enough. The answer that it's just happening and it's because of you, it's because of your immune system wasn't good enough. Right? So my guest today is Gabe Golden. Gabe, it is so good to have you here today and joining me on Evolving Ageless. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk to you.
I love it. And so here's the deal. I just want to give you a background about Gabe because it will all make sense as to why this journey kind of unfolded before us. So, Gabe's chose to tell the story of autoimmunity through his preferred art form, right? Which is film. So he's worked in Los Angeles on numerous productions. He's written screenplays. He developed his passion for documentaries. He's done documentaries on endangered species and wildfires and soil health and climate change, all of these different aspects of our environment. But then from his own personal experience, what was born was this idea of alternative care for his own story. And so, he's received accolades throughout the years on his filmmaking. And being able to tell his own story and the story, we follow the path in this film of 4 total individuals with autoimmune disease. So Gabe, tell us about this, because I'm so delighted that you're here to both illuminate this idea of autoimmune disease as, it's not your fault. It's not your body gone awry. There's something going on and your wherewithal to stick with it. I'd love to start off really with your story.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It was a long journey, and it started at the age of 14 for me. And I was, an active athletic kid, grew up in Lake Tahoe, had the opportunity to ski and swim and play soccer and was outside all the time. And then really over a pretty short period of time, I developed pain in my feet, which then evolved to pain in all the joints of my body. Really within probably just a few weeks, I was almost bedridden. and from fingers and wrists and shoulders, and everything was just on fire with inflammation. And my parents took me to the best doctors. We ended up at Stanford Medical Center, where they then diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis. This is 32 years ago, and at the time, rheumatoid arthritis was one of the more well-known autoimmune diseases, and at the time there weren't that many actually as there are today. But when I was essentially told that I would probably end up in a wheelchair within 5 to 10 years. I was put on some really aggressive medicines, one of them being methotrexate, which is actually a chemotherapy drug. All of it designed to just suppress the immune system and the response of what's going on. And so that took about 2 years of pretty aggressive treatment, a lot of blood tests every week to make sure those medications weren't harming my organs. But over time, I had some results. I was able to return to some of my activity. But I always had a sense that there was probably an answer to why my body was attacking itself. But when you're young, and certainly back then there weren't all the resources there are today, that you're just trusting the medical doctors that say it's autoimmune, the body is attacking itself, and we don't know why. And in my late 20s, I started to get real curious about what might be going on, and it was about 2003 when I started really investigating, and I was prompted to do that because there were a lot of side effects that I was starting to feel for the medicines. The condition itself wasn't getting any better, and so my first experience with a naturopathic doctor who kind of brought a lot of awareness and realization to me about what was really going on. He opened a lot of doors for me, and the path to healing began there. But it was a long one.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? Conventional medicine, or first of all, it's almost like emergency medicine, right? First, you've got to stabilize the patient, right? So the first thing that happened for you is you had all these, massive experiences, pain throughout your entire body at such a young age, right? So I know this is common. And the reason why we're talking about this is it's happening all across America. Autoimmune disease is a massive on the rise condition that's happening because of many factors related to our environment and our bodies and our genetics and all of these different things coming together. But here's the thing, and I think with so many people with autoimmune conditions, the first answer is, I got to get out of this pain, or I got to figure out a way to get my symptoms under control. And so the answer in medication is usually the first step, right? Because that gave you your life back in a sense, right? You needed to stabilize so that you could then start to work on the problem. And I feel like so often, right, there's so many folks that are on autoimmune medications and they think, well, that's it, right? That's the answer. And their doctors, I will say that's really common, I think, for physicians to say, this is it, you're on this drug for life. And if you think about what it's doing, right, you said it, it's suppressing your immune system, right? And so it's crazy because your immune system is what protects you. So it's basically turning the shield off that's protecting you from everything from the outside so that the inside doesn't attack itself. And so it feels like a lose-lose situation for people with autoimmune disease. And that's why it causes so much desperation, right? So, okay, so now you're 20 and you're thinking, everything I'm reading is leading me toward what? Lifestyle improvement, right? Diet, exercise. So what happened then?
Well, yeah, I love the way you said that. It's like taking the shield down, with the
Yeah.
medications. And so, yeah, that was really the realization I had with my naturopathic doctor, who began to, make me very aware that what was going on was very serious. That those medications were taking their toll on my body. My thyroid was compromised. I had liver function issues. A variety of things, in my testing that the mainstream physicians didn't seem to be very concerned about or weren't testing for. He was, and it woke me up to the seriousness of really dealing with it. I did end up getting off of my medications all at once. I just dumped them and kind of dove into this
Wow.
holistic, detox program where I did a variety of antimicrobial herbs and detoxification and a whole new diet. And went gluten-free and, sugar-free and all of that back in 2003. Um, and, that was essential, and it really, all great steps, but I wouldn't recommend people just dive off of their drugs after being on them, whether you've been on them 6 months and they seem to be helping, or 6 years. That's it's a little too aggressive. The nice thing is, looking back, I would just recommend, if you're on those medications, you can stay on them and incorporate all of these other changes. And then as those changes, you really get into a place where you're more stable, potentially less pain, you can start to taper down the medications. So my initial dive into, the healing journey was very, very broad in terms of detoxing, changing the diet. And we did do what's called a pulsed dosed antibiotic therapy. And that was only 2 days a week of antibiotics, but there's a lot of research by a Dr. Thomas McPherson Brown, who actually was doing this in the 70s and 80s and having a lot of success treating autoimmune as though there was an underlying infection. I'm not saying that that's the absolute way to go now. There's a whole bunch of new ways in which we can address the overall, immune system and its ability to fight an infection that it might be dealing with. And oftentimes, I think with these autoimmune conditions, you're dealing with different components of, leaky gut, where you're eating foods that are aggravating the body. You're getting undigested proteins into the bloodstream. You're causing an inflammatory reaction that way. Because the gut lining has been damaged from poor diet and glyphosate and all of these salts we have on our bodies. But once you start to address kind of everything broadly, the immune system and everybody's own biology really has the potential to balance back out, and eliminate whether that's an infection causing the trigger, or whether it's just environmental toxicity, or it's food sensitivities. So
a couple of things that you said. First of all, a 20-year-old guy, right, struggling and tired of this. I get it that you were like, I'm done. I'm not going to take anything, and come what may, I'll tackle it that way. And I appreciate your older self looking back on that, saying that was crazy, right? Because you threw your body back into a storm, most likely, and it worked for you. And I love that you caution others to work with their physicians on that, because I totally agree. Like you can do all of those things that are going to clean up your body while you're still maintaining your regimen with your physician, and then slowly ease your way over, or find a different physician, right? Like whatever path is, what we're talking about today is how to find your path, and Gabe is kind of illuminating the path, which is, I love this idea. So you tackled it head on, you achieved fairly great success, right? But you also, because of your film background, and I love this, you were like, I'm going to document my journey. And hey, while I'm at it, I've made friends with these people. I'm going to follow their journey too, right? So now this idea of illuminating the path on autoimmune disease through the lens, literally, of your experience and the experience of other people who also suffered from autoimmunity. So let's talk about that. So I saw, in the trailer, you've got just some great video of yourself, actually, and I could see the struggle. You're so young. It was painful to watch, really. But then you found this group and started to film your journey. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. One of the things about, being ill is you isolate yourself, and you don't always have a community. And so I developed a little support group for people with rheumatoid arthritis or autoimmune disease, and got a good group of people together. But there were only, a couple of people that really were interested in kind of the way I was approaching it. A lot of people wanted emotional support. They just wanted to get together and kind of, I would call it commiserate, but everybody had their way in which they dealt with it. But there were a couple of people who really raised their hands and said, I want to know what you're doing. I want to know how you are doing so well after so many years with this condition. And so I started documenting their journey as well. And they were very inspiring to me as well, because my journey was I had done well, but I still had been on it a long time. I had settled into kind of a plateau, still had some, significant issues with my knees, even though most of my body had healed very well. And they kind of inspired me to step up and push myself further and keep searching for answers. And so together we all kind of filmed and went on this journey of healing. And because I had them as well as, another set of eyes doing the research as well, we all we found ourselves going places that I think I never maybe would have found, and technologies and testing and diagnostics and
Holy cow. Okay, so we talked about this. You did lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, like you said, getting rid of gluten, detoxification, really focusing on, cleaning up any kind of impurities that find their way into our food. We talk about this all the time on Evolving Ageless, glyphosates that are in our, pesticides and things like that that find their way into our food. This is just our body's way of taking out the trash, right? And if it struggles to take out the trash, it causes inflammation, right? So this idea of detoxification, and then this realization that, okay, I've done all of the kind of first level things that I could do, right? Where else am I going? Well, I bet sleep was a part of it, right? I'd love to hear about that, and stress. But what I really found fascinating was this connected emotions as well. So let's talk about that, because I've seen it many, many times, and personally, I've experienced it. I had a kidney stone the size of a nickel when I was pregnant with my son, and I was pregnant. There was nothing they could do, so I had to suffer through it. And the relationship that I had with pain became very weird and intertwined with friendship. Like, it was there for me. It was weird. And so I it's only a very small example. I can't possibly compare myself to having a lifelong struggle with an autoimmune disease, but in that window of time, that desperation, I get it. I completely get the connection of emotions and the way it alters the way you think, and things start to carry a cloud around them all the time. And so let's talk about that, because I think it's so natural when people are suffering to go in that direction.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? I mean, you have the emotional stress from just being ill and what that does to you and the state of being it puts you in, kind of in a survival mode. You sort of tend to maybe protect yourself a bit. You maybe don't, you're not out and engaged in the world as much, and that can create isolation and loneliness and some despair, I think, that goes with the limitations that you've got to deal with. Um, the other aspect is dealing with past emotions and past stresses and traumas, or even current ones in your environment, be that relationships, work. There's a whole variety of things there that you can address that ultimately you need to address in order to calm the nervous system down. For me, all of us on this journey, we ultimately ended up taking this journey into, while we got a lot of success with diet and a variety of modalities that we cover in the film, we all had to go within. We all had to, it was like, to get to the finish line, there really had to be this dive within ourselves and a way to solve whatever was still disturbing the nervous system. For me, I did something called somatic experiencing, where I was working with a therapist who's great in guiding me toward things that were still potentially I was still carrying, that I would never have imagined were still affecting me. And having someone guide you there and release certain emotions was really huge for me. It was a major realization that um, that was still a step to take. And that's something that you once you start doing that, you do it, and it's not just about, oh, and I'm going to do this few steps and get better and it's going to heal my condition. You do it, and it transforms you as a person. You become someone a little bit different, and someone who's a little bit better able to engage the world, and you carry a different state of being a lot of the time. So I think the biggest lesson, when you're starting on this journey, yes, there's so many things you can do, from detoxifying your environment and changing all the products you use and diet and all of this. But all of those things that you do for them to be most effective, I think you have to be have a balanced nervous system. And we know that our two sides of our nervous system, from our sympathetic and our parasympathetic, we're all way too sympathetic dominant because of a whole variety of reasons. But there's just too much noise, too much Wi-Fi, too many toxins, and too much stress and stuff we're carrying from the past. And once you can kind of address all of that, and you get the nervous system calm on a regular basis, it can actually the body can finally use all of those other things that you're doing to actually heal. And I think that was a big lesson for all of us.
So when I first heard you say that, because we've talked about this before, when I first heard you say that, it woke something up in me, right? Because my background is nutrition. And so I'm thinking, 80% of everything is solved with nutrition and some lifestyle changes, right? But it's not always. And this idea that even though you're making those changes and that other 20% or whatever that it's not working is because I loved how you couch it. It's like, until you work on yourself in the whole, right? Then all these little parts can't get assimilated because you're not whole, right? It's that, and it's funny, we use the term holistic health, holistic whatever, but it just, the root of it just is whole, right? And so changing your thoughts, changing your perspective, changing your habits, changing your sleep, changing, so making small changes that all have a holistic impact that allow you then to digest food better and absorb nutrients better. And it just makes so much sense that the low line, the way we get our inflammation down is by just staying on staying on the clean path, right? And incorporating all that into our lives. That's powerful, because it's, Joe Dispenza talks about that, like how to, changing you. How do you change you? And what are you? And so that's just so powerful for people. It's such a powerful message. I want to talk though also about the four of you, right, on this journey, because there was a discovery that I thought was fascinating too, because, and again, this is random, right? These were 3 other people that you connected with in your support group that had autoimmune. They didn't all have rheumatoid, did they? Did everybody have rheumatoid?
No, the other girl in the film, Lainey, was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and had symptoms that, were leading doctors in that direction. She had multiple diagnoses actually, and then ended up finding out she also had Lyme disease. So then it became, what does she really have going on? And then that led us, of course, where we went with ultimately with the doctors in the film who treat with what they call biological medicine, which is saying, let's not really worry about what your diagnosis is. Let's look at your biology. Let's look at what's going on in all the systems, and let's figure out how we balance out those systems so that your body will just heal whatever it's dealing with.
So much sense, I think, especially in the case of autoimmune disease, because it's almost like your immune system, we can't trust it. It's not telegraphing the right information, right? It in a sense temporarily has gone haywire. And so that makes sense as to why the symptoms would be like rheumatoid arthritis, maybe even her labs, because we're so conditioned to look down this path of, what are the antibodies looking like? And then that's rheumatoid arthritis, right? So, but again, at that point, you really can't trust the immune system to tell the story, right? To tell the truth. And so it wasn't just Lainey, right? With Lyme. It turned out that there was another person with Lyme. So out of 4 of you, 2 of you had Lyme.
Correct.
As the underlying root cause, which blows my mind, because that's a little, I don't think it's half of all people with autoimmunity, but just the idea that having an underlying chronic infection could absolutely devastate someone's life, right?
It adds, a whole nother layer of complexity to your diagnosis. And depending on what doctor you're seeing and what they have to say about Lyme, they can say, oh my gosh, you've got to get on all these antibiotics. Or some will say there's no such thing as chronic Lyme. And then other naturopaths will say, it's a real thing, but everybody seems to have their own approach to how they treat that. So again, going back to the more holistic and broad way in which you deal with this, there are the experts out there like Dr. Christine Schaffner and others who, from the Klinghardt Clinic and Sophia Health Institute in Seattle, and there are really good doctors out there who have so much experience with this, and if you can't get to them, you can actually get educated by them. They have resources, books, online events that are great to just start taking in that knowledge, because you're ultimately, and I absolutely think it's essential to have a good naturopathic doctor, and many MDs these days are going in that direction, but someone with the real clinical experience of dealing with autoimmune and Lyme, and then you're ultimately going to have to educate yourself so that you can discern what's best for you. Because then when you get on this path and there's a lot of people telling you different things and you're reading a lot of different things, you ultimately have to get educated enough that you can guide yourself with your intuitive gut feeling about what ultimately is really going to be right for you. So yeah,
Back to testing, right? Not I mean, there are so many ways to test for Lyme, and some are very superficial, right? And not that we're going to turn this all into Lyme, but it's very superficial, like, oh, nope, you don't have Lyme, when in fact there's some much deeper ways to really investigate and test for Lyme. And so it even depends on the type of testing that your doctor's doing. So I love your suggestion to educate yourself more about going deeper. And in that same vein, naturopathic physicians, functional medicine physicians, I would also put them into that same category of people that are very familiar with autoimmune disease and the quest, right? That journey for finding the root cause of what's causing your immune system. Again, your immune system is trying to protect yourself. So the goal is to figure out, what is it protecting you from? Because it's not just randomly haywire. We've got to abandon that idea that it's just randomly haywire. There's something there. And I think it's fascinating that in your film, half of the people had Lyme there. And so that's powerful stuff.
They're doing great now, but it was the long journey. And again, a lot of searching and a lot of, as was mine. And it's interesting that there was an infectious component with me. Mycoplasma infection is linked to rheumatoid arthritis and some other autoimmune diseases. But treating just that infection wasn't really the answer. I had initial success with pulse dose antibiotic therapy and antimicrobial herbs and changing diet and all of this, but then it kind of lingered too. There were other things going on. Whether the infection was still lingering or whether this was related more to leaky gut or food sensitivities, was hard to know. So I guess just sort of assuming that, in this day and age, we all have some, of a body burden going on, and you can do so much on your own. Again, going and getting the great diagnostics that are available now, and getting a good doctor who really practices this kind of medicine, which I would actually call practicing healing, and doctors really are, the real meaning behind the word doctor is to teach. So these great doctors that I've encountered have taught me and taught me how to take care of myself. When you're sick, it can be overwhelming to try to learn how to cook and eat healthy and do all of these things. So you kind of have to take it step by step. But when you start looking at what you can do, just even in your environment, if you want to take a burden off your body, you change all the products that you're using, from the lotions and the toothpaste and the detergents and all of the cleaners that you use, all these things that are constantly around you and going on in your body, you change those out to things that are more natural. You take more vitamin D, you get some sunlight, you do deep breathing, you manage stress, you make sleep a really big priority. You turn off your Wi-Fi at night, you don't let your phone sit right next to your bed on at night, turn it in airplane mode. These are all things that are disturbances that are kind of hitting us. And once we kind of just become aware of the habits, how to just maybe make those changes, those are things that are done. You don't even think about it, you just do it. And those are, now you've taken a big burden off the body, and you're on the way, at least, to that holistic approach.
Even something as simple as taking your shoes off and not wearing shoes in your home, the impact that can have, think of all of the chemicals on the lawns and in the ground, and we bring that into our home and we track it around. And if we've got pets or we've got small children, they're crawling in it and playing in it. and then we're picking them up and snuggling, like just cleaning small things, making small changes. I love that. So okay, so now the film, okay, is lighting the path film, right? I love this, lighting the path. And the word illuminating comes to me all the time because it's really what you've done. I mean, really taking this idea of autoimmune disease as a diagnosis and a disease, and shining the light on it, so that, you know, when we say like shining the light, there's no shadow, there's no place to hide, it's all out in the open. And I think anyone that themselves or knows someone that suffers with autoimmune disease, and it doesn't matter whether, oh well, I don't have rheumatoid arthritis, I have MS or Crohn's, it doesn't matter. Autoimmune disease is autoimmune disease. It just manifests differently in each individual based on your individual characteristics, you know, your genetics and your lifestyle and things like that. So, you know, it's all the same. Start thinking of all those diseases as the same. And with that in mind, I just love that you've shined the light on it and given people options and choices and education, and at least taking the first step on that path, right? Which might be finding a physician that complements your medical care, or finding nutritionists, or finding, you know, somatic workers, or whatever the case is. I think this film is really groundbreaking in the area of autoimmunity.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, but the feature film tells our stories, you know, in a typical documentary format, you know, where we really see the healing as it happens, all our trials and tribulations, and we introduce a lot of modalities this way to the audience, give you a little taste of each one, and then because, you know, this is a broader conversation and it's something that requires a little bit more education. Built several episodes. Right now I have 7 additional episodes, and I'm adding more with, you know, a lot of great luminaries, who, some of them like Dr. Terry Walls, who was a mainstream medical doctor who had severe MS and healed herself and wrote a great book about it, and has now brought all this credibility of nutrition to studies and all kinds of clinical studies that she's guiding. You know, we have interviews with her. We have interviews with a lot of just extended interviews from people that were in the film, doctors that helped all of us along the way. So those episodes, you know, are very tightly edited too. I try to really condense them down, give you just the information that you need, so that maybe you'll even feel compelled to watch it a second time, and it's not going to be too much, you know, redundancy, or wading through a lot of content just to get really the greatest hits and the key, you know, bullet points that you want to know. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I'm continuing to, you know, add more content, but I think we've you know, hopefully lit the path at least a little bit for some people, and inspire them to go that another direction, because really it comes down to redefining what a doctor is. You know, we have to have a different expectation of what a doctor does for us. If all they're doing is providing a medication, that's what that doctor does. They provide that medication, and you really have to understand that that's all that they do. They're not really healing you or seeking that, and you have to go find one that will. And then also understanding that we have a much greater potential to heal than we've all been taught. Our bodies know how to be well. We just have to, you know, nurture them and put them in the right condition, in the right environment, and take care of ourselves.
That is the money statement right there. That is it, right? That sums up everything about optimal health and wellness. You know, we own it. It really is ours. And our bodies have this infinite ability to continuously heal, right? We've talked about this before on Being Ageless. Like when you were a kid, you could fall, you could break an arm, you could skin your knee, and you never questioned, am I going to be like this forever? Right? But the older we get, when we get aches and pains, we start thinking, is this permanent? Is this right? But the beauty of it is your body knows how to heal itself. We just sometimes have to get ourselves out of the way. And I think you have lit the path, right? So the name of the documentary is Lighting the Path. What I love about all of this work is that you so generously give this documentary to us. And so we have a link below in our show notes to follow this link. You can even just watch the 2-minute trailer, share it with your friends. But the 7 series are available, and I know you're constantly adding more material into this and helping people find their path, lighting the path so they can find their way to experiencing that kind of infinite healing that we talked about, which is incredible, really incredible.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and share it. It's essential that we have people who will help spread the word, because in this day and age there's just so much media and so much out there, and we need people to distribute it for us, when we're trying to send a message out that's really essential. So thank you.
I'm just so honored that you were able to join me today and talk to us a little bit about it and light the path for our listeners. So thanks, Gabe, for taking the time out. That was amazing, wasn't it? Like learning that we have control and watching someone go before us and bring that information to us in the path, and getting the first steps going is quite a gift. And it's a gift you can give yourself. You can give it to someone that you know. But definitely, if you know anyone that suffers with autoimmune conditions, 100%, absolutely share this film with them. I think it'll be life-changing. So with that, thank you for joining me again on Evolving Ageless. I will be back here next week with another expert in their field sharing the latest and greatest. Remember, we're just making small changes that have a large impact in our long-term health and our aging. Bye for now.